Hello there, Shine and Thriver. Welcome back to another episode of the Shine and Thrive Photography Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Monica, and I'm really excited today because we're going to be chatting about marketing. And I know a lot of you pretty much are always open, have your ears open to more marketing ideas and tactics and the way that you can really show up in your business more confidently to be confident in the fact that you will get bookings because I know, being a photographer, sometimes it could feel scary to think, hey, I don't know where my money's coming from in 3 months, in 2 months, or in off season and all of that. So obviously focusing more on your marketing can increase your demand, which increases your confidence in your ability to be booked every year and continue to raise your rates as you increase your expertise as well in exactly what you offer as a photographer. So today I have an amazing guest, Annemie Tonken. She is also an educator within the photography industry. She has her own podcast. It's called This Can't Be That Hard. She is well known for the simple sales system. In case you haven't heard it, it's actually she partnered with PickTime to create an app within PickTime to help increase your product sales after sessions within your online gallery system. So, yeah, she just is like so incredible. I'm so impressed with everything that she does. And today we talk about marketing and she shares her four-tiered approach to marketing. And I love the way she breaks it down. It got me really excited because I'm a visual learner as well as a kinetic learner. And obviously kinetic digitally isn't possible, but I love how she visually describes the four tiers. And it got me really excited because it has to do with rocks. And if you know me, I love rocks and like minerals and crystals and all of that. So I'm like, oh, this is going to be so easy for me to remember. And so I know it's going to be so easy for you to remember as well, because metaphors are such a powerful learning tool. And before you dive into the episode, I'm excited just to introduce you to her. So she has been, or Annemie Tonken has been a family photographer since 2010, and she is now an educator and host of the This Can't Be That Hard podcast, where she focuses on business systems and strategies that help creative entrepreneurs run profitable and sustainable businesses they love. So me and her are very aligned in our mission. I'm all about helping photographers, increase their revenue, make their business more sustainable, increase the amount of time freedom they have as well. And so I'm obsessed that she's helping photographers do that as well, because systems are such an integral part to any successful photography business. So without further ado, enjoy diving into today's episode. All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Shine and Thrive Photography Podcast. I am so excited to have my guest Annemie here today. We're going to chat a lot about marketing, and I'm so excited to learn from her and her four-tiered approach to marketing. And I always love it when people break it down like that because it gets me so excited to like learn the four tiers. I'm like, tell me the four tiers. So welcome, Annemie. I am so excited to chat with you today.
Yay, I'm excited to be here. Thanks, Sarah.
Of course. And for those of you tuning in on YouTube, how incredible is her bubblegum background? I'm like drooling over and obsessed. And she has like all the colors, like yellow headphones, a blue jean jacket. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, you're making me fall in love more with color because I'm a neutrals girl.
Aw.
But lately I'm like, you know what? Pops of color just make me so happy. I might be transitioning.
I do. I feel like there's a pendulum effect with that. Like I do the same thing where in all parts of my life, I'll be like, I love monochrome. It's just so peaceful. And then I get into that for a while and then I'm like, nope, back to color. So
That's so awesome.
clearly in the
Actually,
color
speaking,
phase.
yeah, clearly the color phase. That's so funny. So speaking about, random things about you that you enjoy, I thought it'd be fun to start off this episode with three random facts about you. So, peeps can get to know you a little bit, and so can I.
Oh my goodness. I love it when people ask for this sort of stuff and I'm like, now I can't even remember my name. Like, who
Yeah,
am
who
I?
am
Where
I?
is this?
Existential, like midlife crisis. What?
Totally. I don't know it. There's nothing to tell. Three random facts. Well, I'll do the boring one. I live in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and I have 2 kids and a fiance. I'm recently engaged. So that's like
Ooh,
a second one, right?
congrats. Yeah.
Thanks. And let's see, have nothing to say. I am a
That's
really
a good
boring
random
human.
fact, though.
I swear I do, but my brain is dead and I didn't have an afternoon cup of coffee today. So we'll
Aw.
see. We'll see what happens.
Okay, so that's another random fact. You love your coffee.
Oh, yes, I do.
Okay, so maybe another one. Let me prompt you. What's like your go-to show that comes to mind that you like love?
Oh, I love lots of different shows. I just finished, or I'm up to date now on the new season of Ozark, which is super
Ooh,
fun. And
don't,
then
of course, you're not gonna spoil it, but yeah,
no,
we're
I'm not going to
waiting to
spoil
finish
it.
it. We're so
So
close.
good. And then I just deep dived on a new show called Outer Range with Josh Brolin, which is really fun. So that
Interesting.
I'll give you 2. One a standby, and one is a brand
Yeah,
new one for me.
yeah, awesome. All right, so let's dive into the juicy, nerdy conversation about marketing. I can't
Love
wait.
it. My favorite.
So feel free to dive in, guide us through what is the 4-tiered approach to marketing that you do.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, so we'll start off by saying, like, oh, this is what I do. I love one of my favorite things about hosting a podcast or being on podcasts or whatever is this immediate position of like, oh, I know what I'm talking about. I do. I've spent a lot of time studying things and I certainly know what's best. But I'll just preface this whole thing by saying, like, let's be real. We are all, most of us, solopreneurs, right? We're operating businesses on our own. There's so much to do every day. And so a lot of the stuff we can, I want to put it out there that I'm going to explain this because like, this is the dream, right? We all would love to be super, super organized all the time and have this like perfect workflow and all that sort of thing. And over time, if you sort of aim toward those things, you do get closer and closer and closer. But nobody's perfect. You don't have like teams of 30 people in your marketing department who are all like showing up 9 to 5 each day to like implement all this stuff. So we'll just start out by saying that I want to give you a framework to think about this because marketing with a big capital M can be really overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where you're like, I know I need more clients. I need to connect with people. I need to build that know, like, and trust factor. But like, how on earth do I go about doing that? I know I'll just check in on Facebook or like pop in and scroll down on Instagram and like I'll post something and we'll call it marketing. That is not the way to think about it. So you've probably heard this little metaphor story thing before. This is not mine. But there's, a professor walks into his science class, stands up in front of the class and has like a large beaker, an empty beaker. And he holds up the beaker in front of the class and he says, is this beaker empty or full? And everybody says it's empty. And so he opens a drawer and takes out a big bunch of rocks and he puts the rocks in the beaker. And he holds up the beaker and he says, is it empty or full? And they all say it's full. And then he opens another drawer. And in that drawer, he's got a bunch of pebbles. And he takes the pebbles and he slowly pours them in. And because there's space in between the big rocks, the pebbles kind of filter in and eventually they fill up to the top of the beaker. So he holds it back up and he says, is it empty or full? And, by now the students are like, oh, I see what's happening. Yeah. So he has some who are like, well, it looks pretty full. And then the others are like, it's not full. And
we know what's coming next.
Exactly. And so he like pulls out his bag of sand and he pours the sand in and it filters in between the pebbles. And then at the very end, he takes a jar of water and he's able to pour the entire jar of water in because the tiny little spaces in between the sand still have space. So when I think the first time I heard this, well, I probably heard it a long time ago, but at some point when I was in my photography journey, learning about marketing, I heard this again and I was like, it's like marketing because when we think about marketing, a lot of times what we do is we do that thing. I sort of categorize action or activity as like, is this am I being active in my activity, or am I being kind of passive in my activity? So one thing I love to do, and you probably love this too, because I get the feeling that you and I have a lot in common from having listened to your podcast and everything else, but like I am like just a totally obsessive learner. Like I'm always buying online courses and like reading new books and all this sort of thing. So that's all great. And you can learn so much. But of course, when you're learning stuff and not actually implementing it, that's what I would call passive action. Like you're filling your time and it feels like, and there is value there, and it feels like you're taking action, but until you actually take action, that's when it turns into active action. So social media to me is that sort of water. Like it's everywhere in our marketing, it's free, it's easy. You can like get to it pretty quickly, whatever. However, if that professor had pulled the beaker out and just poured water into it, the rest of it wouldn't have gone I mean, yeah, sure, you could like pour some pebbles in and it would splash a bunch of water out, but you wouldn't be able to do it in a way that like by the end you could put rocks in there, like the pebbles and the sand would fill it up and there would be no rocks. So I think it's really important when you're thinking about your marketing action and the activity that you take, that you not just sort of fill up all of your marketing space with those little activities like posting on Instagram and expect that to really do the heavy lifting, because there are other marketing. Social media is good. It's important. A lot of people are actually using it these days to find and connect with their, wedding photographers or their portrait photographers. But if it's all we're doing, we're putting our eggs in one basket and we don't even own that basket, right? We are relying on algorithms and all this other stuff. So when I talk about the 4 levels of marketing, I'm going to call them rocks, pebbles, sand, and water, because that's how I think about them.
That is amazing. And thanks for giving me that visual.
That's powerful. Of course. Yeah. And then I like to, when I sit down at the beginning of each year or at the beginning of each quarter, I like to approach them from that like big level down to the small level, so that I'm prioritizing my time and my action in things that have the most leverage. Because again, we are solopreneurs. We're trying to wear all the hats. We have to prioritize and give ourselves, the most bang for our buck when it comes to the activity that we take. Is this all making sense?
Yes, that is incredible. My notes say rocks, pebbles, sand, water, prioritize.
Oh, good.
No, I love that. Right. So that's what you're going to break down for us. That's so exciting.
Yeah. So we'll start with those like big activities and those rocks. And when I think about my year, like if I'm trying to plan out a year's worth of marketing and how I'm going to structure my marketing, rocks are the first thing that I think of, because they are potentially the most powerful, the ones that have the biggest impact. They also can take up the biggest portion of your marketing budget, both financial budget and like your time budget, because oftentimes these like big leverage activities can take up some time. What I like to tell people is that if you are smart about your rocks and designing them, you can put a lot of effort in the first time that you put together a rock activity, and then subsequently it should be easier, either because you can sort of take that same formula and reapply it, or you can just like kind of rinse and repeat a little bit versus starting from scratch.
Yeah, or delegate it or outsource and delegate it, since you've already created a system around it.
100%. That's a really important point too. And so, but you do that first time around, you kind of have to like come up with the concept, put it into action. Now I know you are a wedding photographer and a lot of wedding photographers are out there. I would categorize something like a bridal show or that kind of, big thing where you're going out and you're buying samples and you're, building kind of a little booth set, whatever. That's going to qualify as a rock, because it takes up some pretty significant like real estate in your budget. However, I wouldn't necessarily that's not necessarily the hardest one to put together, because you usually just like sign up for a spot, and then there's a bit of a formula for like how to build a wedding booth or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You could get super creative with it, but it's still a high visibility, you're kind of going all in on an in-person event. And I do like to say that a lot of times, not only, but when I'm thinking about rock activities and brainstorming those with people, and they can be anything. I mean, there's not like a finite number of them, but almost all of them are going to end up being in person, because showing up in person now that we hopefully can again, is, it really does have so much power in a world where we are just like constantly inundated with digital and email kind of marketing. So bridal shows, I used to, for years in my photography business, my major rock that again took me forever to put together the first time, but then became this kind of rinse and repeat nice piece of marketing that I did, was a course that I taught, class. I shouldn't call it a course. It was a 3-hour class called Cameras and Cocktails, where I would get together. I would invite, typically it was moms who had a DSLR camera. This was, we're talking about 7-8 years ago. So it was a little pre-mirrorless, but they owned a DSLR, like a prosumer grade DSLR, and didn't really know what to do with it, right? They were just like keeping it on program all the time and taking snapshots, or they weren't even bothering to pull it out of the bag because they felt intimidated by it. So I taught this 3-hour course. It was super laid back and fun. I did it in different locations. I would sometimes go to someone's house and they would host it like a book club. So their friends would come over. Oh my God.
Genius, I say.
Sometimes I would do it at I had a studio at the time, so I would host them at my studio. I also partnered with some local small businesses that would host little classes. Like we had a maker space in my town and I would go and teach this class there. And that was great, particularly because they would do the advertising for the class. And so I was reaching people that would never necessarily have come across me, but I was very specific in who it was targeted for, which was moms. And these are moms who are spending not a ton of money, but a little bit of money on a class that they're going to take. And they were a little bit pre-qualified because they owned a camera that probably cost them $1,000. So what I'm getting at there is that it's important that you're like pretty choosy about the audience that you are in front of for these rock activities. But anyway,
and because so the listeners might not know that you are a family photographer.
Oh yeah,
right?
Sorry.
So that's where that
fun fact about me, number 18.
Yeah, number 18. So that's where that connection was made, because then they would find out about you and your work, and of course, like you're empowering them to teach them how to take photos, of their kids and family and all that. But guess who's missing in the photos? If they're the ones taking the photos, the mom. So it's like, why don't you want memories, and don't you want your kids to have memories of you within the frame as well? Like, hello, hire me.
Totally.
Genius, I say.
But what was so great about this, and I know a lot of people get pretty intimidated by, tooting their own horn and advertising or marketing themselves. What was great about this was that at no point during that entire 3 hours was I like, hey, you should hire me. I didn't even say out loud the whole like, since you're not in the picture.
Yeah.
What I got to do was I had a slide presentation that was illustrating all of the different concepts I was teaching. And guess who took all the pictures in the slide deck, right?
Yeah.
Those are my photos. So they're sitting there looking at these photos being like, oh man, that's so pretty. That's so pretty. And I will say that over the course of the 6 or 7 years that I was regularly teaching that class, I would say that 50 to 60% of the people who attended that class ended up hiring me at some point or another.
Wow.
I would give them
huge.
It was amazing. And it was, and they were super pre-qualified. They knew exactly like, no, I'm not shopping for other photographers. Like, I want to hire you. Do you remember me? You came to my house and taught that class. And so it was great. I don't want to belabor the point of this class, but that's the sort of activity. I also like to put in the Rocks group things like contributing to auctions. If there is a like a benefit happening that is in line with what you do that you can contribute to. And there are, lots of strategies about that are important to know. But those are the kinds of activities. You're getting out in your community, you're showing your face, You're demonstrating your expertise. Maybe you're writing for a local publication or you're, whatever. The idea is it's going to take you some time, but it's going to pay off because you are developing your kind of, you're establishing yourself as that expert in that area. So, so those are your rock activities. And those are, I usually say, if you can plan 3 to 4 of those a year, you're good. So 1 a quarter. And then once you have your rocks, then we move down to our pebbles. And pebbles and sand are a little bit more, to me, they're a little bit more like, okay, these have very specific kinds of activities associated with them in my mind. So when you are getting down onto the pebble level, what you're trying to do is sort of establish more of your expertise. So I guess I said expertise at that rock level, but really it's about visibility. Brand awareness, name awareness, recognition, all that sort of thing. We'll do that. Rocks are for recognition. So it's that R connection.
Yeah.
And then at the pebble level, we'll call that your professional level. So, so your expertise. So I like to say that this is where you are creating some kind of content every month. So it has to do with SEO. The content should live on your website. So it's kind of a double whammy. You get some SEO goodness, and you also get some expertise status, or expert status. But what you're trying to do is create content that benefits your ideal client month after month after month, but just one a month. So this could be a blog post. That's sort of the traditional way to do it. These days, people are doing amazing things with, like, you could have a YouTube, channel where you're giving tips to local moms. I do like to say that unless the majority of your work is travel based, you really should be tying this into your local market so that you don't just have a bunch of people Googling. Like, it's great for you just kind of generically if a bunch of people are coming to your website, but if those people are never going to hire you because you live in Florida and they live in Dublin, like, that doesn't really do you any good.
Yeah, that's so true. Geography is important when it's an in-person service.
It is. Yeah. And so, if you can tie it into, like, for instance, I'm a family photographer in North Carolina. So if I were to say, like, if I were trying to get newborn clients, I might do my favorite, birth center and hospital, like places where people go to deliver babies in this area. I'm going to interview these 3 midwives and like talk to them about the different benefits of where they are. And I'll talk about the fact that I'm a photographer, but I'm also just going to like talk about some of the other things that are relevant to that audience, so that if someone is pregnant, considering, 3 different places to have a baby, and then they Google that and my name comes up, all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, that's interesting. But also newborn photos. I hadn't even thought about that yet. So, so the idea is that you are getting people, hopefully cold people, like cold audiences who've never even necessarily heard of you, are finding you, and you're giving them a way to find you and connect with you on a monthly basis. The beautiful thing about this pebble marketing is that although it takes some time, once you get good at it and you kind of establish a pattern for yourself, and you can map this stuff out pretty easily, like at the beginning of the year, and just kind of put it on your calendar. If you fill all your time with like scrolling on Instagram, you're not going to do it. But if you put it on there and you have a plan and you're like, at the beginning of the month, I sit down and I write my blog post, or I make my video and I'm going to post it, that lives there forever. And that is sort of an evergreen source of people finding you. And so the more of those that you create, and the more expertise that you demonstrate, the more credit Google is going to give you when people are searching. And also the more kind of front doors you're giving people to walk into your business. And so I think that pebble level is really important.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
Yeah. And I love that it's called pebble level.
Pebble level. Say that 5 times fast.
Pebble level.
Exactly. I'm here to make us all look very cool. Yeah. And so
I love that. And it's so important. It's so funny because I'm straight up going to say, like, I have a lot of, like, for my photography like pillar of my business for
Mm-hmm.
wedding photography, I do have a lot of my eggs in one basket, and that's pretty much Instagram because I
Mm-hmm.
grew my Instagram, my following so much through stories when they first came out because I was pretty much vlogging and like just like being my authentic self, and then
Mm-hmm.
couples that connected to my personality and my photos at the same time were like, I need you. We need you as our photographer. Like, we
Mm-hmm.
love you. Right. And that worked really well for me. But then like now I'm starting to like, it's still working really well for me. And it's mainly Instagram and direct referrals, like word of mouth, that those are my two things that have been working for me. And I'm always booked up for every season. But again, like you said, you don't own the basket, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to think differently about SEO now and starting to really, I'm going to be really focusing my attention there
Mm-hmm.
because I'm at the point where it's so easy for me to just like market effortlessly on Instagram in that way. And so now I have a little bit more time to allocate towards SEO. So it's like, okay, I'm going to own that. So that's going to be something that I'm going to be excited to dive into. So I love how you explained all of that. It was very clearly.
Well, and I think that this is a really good thing that you're raising, which is I think a lot of people now are really starting on social media, and only when they're further down the path are they thinking like, oh, maybe I should broaden this a little bit, or maybe I should start focusing on something like SEO. The reason that I would say, so for instance, Instagram is working great for you. So what argument could I possibly have for you to like entice you to move any of your attention away from that?
I know what
And
argument you would have.
well,
It's a good one,
there
which
is
is
the
the
like,
sooner you start with SEO, the
yes,
more traffic and traction you'll get, the sooner you'll have more demand, the sooner you'll be able to raise your rates and all of that.
sure. Well,
Right.
there's that. Yes,
Mhm.
100%. But that's even a better one. But I was going to say it like, if you were to take what you are doing on Instagram and basically duplicate it, but have it in a place where it doesn't disappear after the story goes away, right?
Yeah.
Then you've got the ability to get people from all different other places, and you can reduce the workload on you, because whereas Instagram has to be, it's like a very hungry beast that you have to feed
Hmm.
it constantly, right? You're constantly having to come up with content. Now, that content is micro content, like it's a tiny little story. You don't have to, oh, great, I can just talk to the camera. I don't have to put on my like makeup and do a whole thing. That's actually true of all these other platforms too. We just get in our head about like, oh, it has to be perfect. It has to be really polished. It doesn't. People
Hmm.
really love that, authenticity or that real flavor. And I encourage people all the time, if you're overwhelmed by the idea of creating monthly content, if you're overwhelmed by the sand marketing that we're just about to talk about, which is everyone's least favorite. All of those things are, if you can just get past your need for those to be perfect and just start creating them on a regular basis, just like social media, they will gain traction. But unlike social media, they have a lot more staying power, a lot more lasting power.
Yeah. 70% perfect is good enough because there's no such thing as perfect.
Amen. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And perfect doesn't really connect with people very well.
No.
Like,
Yeah, it's so true.
yeah. I mean, sure, you don't want to come on and be like, I'm a hot mess. I have nothing to say. At least not every day,
Yeah.
but I think that it is perfectly fine, especially in this industry where we're asking other people to be so real and vulnerable with
Yes.
us. Why would we show up wearing a business suit and like pointing with a pointer at a board? It doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said.
Yeah. So the next tier of that marketing really is email marketing. And again, like, could I put like a white bun on top of my head and just be like, oh, we're going to talk about email marketing?
Oh my God, it's so funny.
When I say it, I feel like
People just vomit in their mouth or something?
Well,
Or
no, it's just
photographers?
so, yeah, it's like, oh, it's so old school, right? Like email. I have, my kids are older than
Mhm.
yours. I have a 16-year-old and he's like, Mom, no one emails anyone anymore. And I'm like, Well, your mom literally puts dinner on the table with the emails
with the
that
email.
she sends.
That's a good comeback. Oh my
Don't
God.
knock it. Yeah. So email is one of those things where we all have overflowing email inboxes and we're like, nobody wants to hear from me. What do I even say? And I totally get that. And I'm not going to like go super granular on like what I think emails should have. I think that as a general rule, as a photographer, you should set a goal for yourself to send 2 emails a month. They don't need to be long. They don't need to be involved. You should be actively building your email list all the time. And there are a bunch of different ways to do that. And we can talk about that if you want. But really, the goal with email, even if people aren't, I mean, you do obviously want to write emails that are openable, that people want to open and read. But I think a lot of people get turned off by the fact that like maybe they send an email every once in a while and like 15% of the people who receive it or 20% of the people who receive it open it. That can feel discouraging. However, if your emails are actually landing in people's inboxes, even if they're not opening them, they're seeing your name. And if they are seeing your name on a regular basis, even if they're like, well, I don't need to hire a photographer right now, so I'm not going to read that email. If they haven't unsubscribed, that door is still an open door. If they are opening and actually consuming the content that you're sending them, which just like all the other content that we're talking about, like it should be valuable to them. And valuable doesn't necessarily mean you have to be teaching something. You can be entertaining them. You can just be sharing photos with like a couple of little thoughts tied in.
Or share the blog post you created or the YouTube video you created. Yeah.
Right. There's so many ways to repurpose that content. And for sure, that should be like, if you're sending an email, you should be driving people to the content that you create on all the different platforms. So none of this should be like recreating the wheel. It's kind of a trickle down effect where you're like, I made this thing in the first email of the month. I'm going to talk about this part of it. And in the second email of the month, I'm going to tell a little story about this other part of it. In those emails, I highly recommend that if you're a portrait photographer and you have space in your calendar, you are inviting people to book, you're giving them those calls to action, but it doesn't need to be each and every email that has some sort of like sell to it, right? You can just be like, hey, go read my blog post. That's a call to action. Or, I'm doing a fun series on Instagram this week. Get them over there. Basically, what you're trying to do with all of these different things is keep people interacting with your brand, even when they're not in the season of buying. Because if the next time they're ready to buy, you're going to be top of mind. The next time they have a friend who's looking for a photographer, your name is going to be like right there on the tip of their tongue. And if you are creating content that is searchable, shareable, that sort of thing, that's going to start to do the job for you so that you're not having to do all this heavy lifting.
Yeah.
And then at the very bottom as we fill our beaker with water, that's where you're showing up on social media and you're taking all this other content and it's turned into like very, very quick, easy to create posts, stories, reels, like all that stuff can be remade and you won't even have to really think twice about what you're going to talk about because all of that will have been mapped out.
I love that. I love how you broke everything down. And it's so funny how you're like the stand that everybody hates. Like, so what do you usually get? Like, what's an objection that photographers usually have around email marketing, do you think?
Oh, I hate writing. What in the world am I going to talk about? I can't, I hate emails. Why would I send other people emails? There are a bunch. I think most of the time it comes down to an insecurity about like, what do I have of value to contribute? And am I just going to be annoying people? Because I think that a lot of us have that lingering doubt. And I was listening to one of your shows recently where you were talking, I can't even remember what you were talking about, but you were talking about something like listening to experts and you were like, just do it. Like, just try it. I know, like,
yes.
Trust the process. That was what you said.
Trust the process, like surrender to it instead of letting your doubting thoughts like stop you because, like we only know our reality the way it is now from past experiences we've had. And so it's easy for our minds to trick us and say, well, that won't work for me, or that's not possible. Or I can't possibly do that, or I'm not good enough. It's like if those thoughts block you, you block yourself from experiencing a new level of success that you can have because from trying something that has worked for someone else, right?
Yeah.
So just trusting that someone has tried it, made it work for them, that it's possible for you too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my mantra when it comes to this sort of thing is like, what's the worst that can happen? Like,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully you're not going to be an asshole in your emails. Like, you should definitely be, respectful of the people who are opening those and give them a fun story, or like share a really beautiful photo and tell them why you loved making it, or whatever the case may be. There's a million different strategies for like a kind of a formula for a good email that you
Mm-hmm.
can Google out there or whatever. We can talk about that another time. That will make it a little bit easier to come up with something of value to say. But I think that trusting that the people who sign up for your list actually did that because they're interested in hearing from you is a good start. Like,
Yeah, and actually, one thing that is very powerful for you to do. So you know how you said that most photographers are saying, "Well, I don't even know what to write about," right?
mhm.
So okay, ask your like. So those of you that are listening, ask yourself this question: What will I even write about? Right? Like it doesn't really give you a quality answer. It kind of makes you feel still overwhelmed and stuck and like, I don't know if I have anything to say. That doesn't give your brain the prompt to actually go into problem solving mode, right? And think outside of the box. So, what you can do, and this works incredibly well for me whenever I'm trying to figure out how to speak directly to my like ideal client, is ask yourself like put yourself in their shoes and be like, what do I want to research for my wedding, for example, or yeah, for like my family photographer. But let's just think about wedding photography as an example, right? Couples are searching for so many tips for their wedding, and guess what we have as photographers? We have photography that visually shows ideas for their wedding, and we can also pair that with words as well. So if you just ask yourself like, what would my ideal client want to like learn, or what are they curious about? You can just create from that kind of space, and then that's what will actually give them that content that gives them value. So even if you build your email list and you're just like um an idea for a ceremony that is like new to 2022. So it'll be like, whoa, it's new to 2022. That means I haven't seen it on Pinterest. That means I haven't seen it
Right.
anywhere. That would really like encourage them to be excited to open the email. And then you can say, for example, have your family and friends give speeches during the ceremony. The ceremony might be a little bit longer, but then you can add so much more like meaning and emotional depth to your ceremony. Like boom, and they're like, oh, I didn't even think of that, and they implement that, and then they think of you when potentially hiring for a photographer because they remember that you gave them that amazing idea. So just think like that. Ask yourself more quality questions, and don't just stop at I don't know what I'm going to write about. Like set a timer for 20 minutes and just brainstorm those ideas through quality questions.
I love that. I also think that you can use your favorite clients or even difficult clients, but ideally, like people that you've worked with recently where there was some sort of issue in the session or the wedding, or they did something super cool in their wedding.
Mm.
Talk about that. Talk about how you problem solved it, or talk about like, this couple, it was a tornado and they were so upset, but then we moved the whole venue because blah blah blah, like
Yeah.
that. Those kinds of stories are relatable if you can have some little lesson in there, like this is what they did that made it really awesome, or this is how they pulled it out and made it work well. But yeah, I mean, I think that your idea about coming up with questions that your ideal client is sitting there typing into Google, it's so quick, it's so easy. Like, how do I get people to stop taking pictures with their cell phones at my wedding ceremony or whatever? And then to your point, we have lots of good visual content to illustrate
Yeah.
our emails or our blog posts or whatever it is that we're putting out there in the world.
Yeah. And actually, another idea that just came to me as like an even faster, like kind of foot in the door to start building your email list. So let's just say you're putting all your eggs in that basket that you don't own, which is the water, which is what we
Mm-hmm.
learned. You're just chilling on social media, marketing away. Um, Imagine if you said something like in a post or in a story, and you're maybe a portrait photographer, and you say, hey, everybody, just FYI, I'm already booked up until the next 3 months. If you don't want to miss out on getting a spot with me this year, make sure to just like get on my email list. Don't worry, I don't email you a ton, only when I have availability, right? Even just that,
Mm-hmm.
you have a direct connection to them whenever you need to boost your bookings.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be a white lie. I mean, it doesn't hurt, right?
Yeah. And the fact of the matter is, if someone is I will say, if you're only emailing people when you're saying sign up to buy, like spend money with me, you will lower your open rates. I
Yeah,
know that seems counterintuitive
it's true.
because when you're signing people up and they're like, well, I don't want to get inundated by your emails. However, if you train them that if they open your email, they're going to want to spend money, they're going to self-filter
Yeah.
versus if you have like a photo of the week or something that you're sharing that they're like, oh, I'm bored at work. I'm sitting here like they've stopped me from going on social media at work. So I have to
Yeah.
like scroll my email. But every time that Annemie sends me an email, she includes some beautiful photo. I want to like open that up.
That's so true.
It
And it
it
could be just so
really,
simple, like just this one paragraph story about the photo that's like a feel good story or something.
yep. And then your
Yeah.
PS is I have 3 more spots available for May.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
PS.
The PS. It's
Yes.
important. It's good real estate there.
It is. Oh my gosh. Okay. So thank you so much for breaking all that down. I'm sure everybody got so many ideas, and I'm sure there are some people that are driving right now being like, damn it, I couldn't write those down. Like, if you just pull over, or I like to leave voice notes too. It's just like voice note it into your phone, like
Love the
pause
voice
the
note.
episode, voice note it to yourself.
Yep.
Is there anything else before yeah, we finish off like the 4 tier, like anything else that's on your mind or heart that you want to share about this part?
No, the reason that I like to break it down this way is just like I said at the beginning. I know that marketing is like can feel like a very scary undertaking. And it is from the time that you get past like the initial setup of your business, marketing becomes probably the largest piece of your business outside of just conducting your business, right? Like the action of getting clients through the door is an ongoing thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you can make that a systematic process where you're not thinking about it as like Mount Everest, but instead you're like base camp one, the next one. I've
Mm-hmm.
obviously never climbed Everest, so I don't really
Base
know what
camp
they're
one,
called.
the next one.
Do they have us base
Do they
camp
have a next
too?
one? That's so
Exactly.
funny.
So as you're facing it, if you're breaking it down, at least for me, that's always easier. So, and if you're thinking about it strategically and you're kind of making sure that you're rounding all these bases, even if you're not doing it perfectly, even if you're
Mm-hmm.
doing it 70%, you're going to serve yourself and your business in the long term so much more effectively than if you're just posting to Instagram. So that's my message of the
Yeah.
day. Ta-da!
And this way, like you can be like more proactive versus reactive, right? So instead of
Right.
getting up in the morning, you're like, I need to market my photography business. What should I post on Instagram? Like you're being just reactive. And then you have that like background pressure of constantly feeling like you need to perform and show up. And it
Right.
could be exhausting, right? Just even subconsciously. Then this way, it's kind of like, okay, I know that, first or second week of January every year, I'll just kind of like put together a plan of what are going to be my rocks for this year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now what are going to be my pebbles? Like you can have like such a fun, you make it a fun little event, like a 1 or 2 day block of time in your off season where you're just like having some coffee, some tea, and then at nighttime, wine and tequila. Best ideas come from there for me sometimes at
Yep.
least. And yeah, just have that kind of like like visualize all those things happening that year and believe that, you can make those happen one step at a time. And
Mhm.
I love how you broke it down, because my like visual brain loved that. You like petted my visual brain with that. And now I'm always going to think of it that way. And it's like, I really appreciate it actually.
Oh, good.
So yeah, thank you so much for that.
So
And
fun.
yeah, I would love to know, because I know you do have, is it a course coming up soon
Yeah.
on marketing?
So I teach a few different things. I don't, marketing is not necessarily the thing that I focus most of my energy on. I'm all about like, you bring those people in, I'm going to show you how to like give them an amazing journey and make as much money as possible. So I'm really
Yes.
into the sales side of things, but I do have a sort of a mini marketing course. So if you're interested in kind of taking this concept and going a little bit deeper, it's called the one month marketing makeover. And you can find out more about that at thiscan'tbethathard.com/makeover. But the course I think you're probably referring to is
Oh
my
yeah, the
simple,
masterclass. I was gonna
yeah.
go to the next one. Yeah,
Oh,
because I
good.
was really
Okay.
excited that, because I love how you explained all of this, and then the fact that you have like a mini course to go in deeper. I know some people are gonna be like, yeah, yeah, like I want to like really like put pen and paper with some guidance to work and be in action, like you said, not be passive, right?
I'm all about it.
Yeah. So yeah, so as Annemie said, you guys can find that at thiscan'tbethathard.com/makeover. And then I'm really excited to hear all about your free masterclass that you have, called the Simple Sales System. So tell us about that, because I know you generate incredible results for yourself and your business, and also help other photographers with that as well.
Yeah. So this is what it's sort of, I guess, the thing that most people probably know me for, if they know me at all, which is just the system that I use to bring clients through once they have found their way to my business. And I teach that whole system in a masterclass that is at thiscan'tbethathard.com/simple. So that is a free 1 hour course. And I would say it's primarily for portrait photographers. I know you've got a bunch of wedding and portrait photographers. This is, if you're strictly weddings, it's probably may not be the thing for you. But if you do portraits, this is a great way. Especially, I know a lot of wedding photographers have clients who come back to them later and say, hey, I'd love for you to do
Mm,
family photos or whatever. And they're like, I don't have a business set up for that.
yeah,
It's a good strategy for that.
that's awesome. And is there any, because I always love hearing like results of other photographers or students. So is there any like results that come to mind of someone taking your masterclass and having like that aha moment, or like a result that they had that got them really excited?
Yeah, I think the thing that people take away most often from the masterclass is the idea that when they got into photography, they felt like there were two paths. Either they needed to create all inclusive pricing, where you just kind of charge a price, deliver digital files, and then maybe hope for product sales, or they kind of go all in. They feel like they need to go all in on in-person sales. And I was an
Mm,
in-person sales photographer for the first 7 years of my business, which is great for kind of revenue generation and giving a very specific kind of client service. But over time, it was pretty, I was feeling pretty burnt out on it. I was spending a ton of time to make the money that I was making. And I felt like I needed to change something. So I created this other system that ended up being so successful that my gallery software, my online gallery software, the people who run it approached me and were like, what are you doing to get such good online print sales? And so when I taught them, or I told them about my process, they were like, great. So we actually collaborated to build an app, like a marketing app for their software. And then I was like, oh yeah, I guess I should probably teach other people how to do this because it works really well. So I've had, students who are making 3 and 4 times what they were making before in the same amount of time or less, because it's kind of the best of both worlds, where you've got like the simplicity of all inclusive, but the client experience of the more like, it's not in-person sales, but you get some of the benefits of it.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. So pretty much they get to experience also having keepsakes from their photos and like tangible items, right?
Which is so important to all of us.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, like that sounds like a freaking juicy masterclass. And so yeah, everybody, like yeah. So if you guys want to check that out, sign up for it. It's a freaking no-brainer. It's free and you get a 1 hour live training. So that's so generous of you, Annemie. You guys can find it at thiscan'tbethathard.com/simple. And oh my gosh, yeah, I think that's a wrap for this episode. Is there anything else that you wanted to share to just like wrap it up, or do you feel complete?
I feel complete, but awesome. I really appreciate you having me on here. I hope I didn't over talk. I felt like that was a lecture.
No. The most adorable lecture on a bubblegum pink background. I'm
That's
like,
right.
Why didn't school have pink chalkboards?
Like it wakes you up.
Yeah. And also, where can people find you like to connect with you on Instagram if you hang out on there?
Great. Yeah. So the podcast is called This Can't Be That Hard. The Instagram is just This Can't Be That, because somebody out there is sitting on This Can't Be That Hard and not posting to it. It kills me.
That hurts so much. You know what? Someone has my name, Sarah Monica, and I've reached out. This is like a person that has like 500. It's a personal account. And I've reached out to her so many times over 2 years, literally being like, this sounds sketchy, but I'll send you money for it. Like I'll pay you for it just because I wanted just to have that because it's more timeless. And yeah, no, not happening.
No dice.
But yeah, we should also tell everybody that you also have a podcast.
Yeah. If you want to hear me drone on and on. No, I'm just kidding. No. Well, thanks. Yes. Podcasts are my jam. That's how I found you. I love yours. It's so good.
Oh, thank you.
No, thank you. And thanks for having me on.
And the podcast, wait. Oh yeah. So you mentioned it. So, okay. Annemie's podcast is called This Can't Be That Hard. That's what it is. Yeah. There you go, guys. In case you were like, wait, what? Did I miss it? Oh, awesome. Well, thank you, Annemie, so much for your time and everything. And yeah, I can't wait to definitely reconnect with you soon, because I remember before we even started recording, we were just like nerd talking and we're like, okay, we better start recording because we're just talking shop so much. So.
It is. It's good stuff. Oh, well, thanks so much for having me. It's been great chatting with you.
Yay! Thank you so much for hanging out with me and tuning into this episode. If you got value out of it, please feel free to message me on Instagram at Sarah Monica Photo. That's Sarah no H, Monica with a K photo, to let me know. I get so freaking energized hearing from others that what I've said has had a positive impact on their lives. Also, make sure to hit subscribe to the Shine and Thrive podcast to never miss an episode. I'm so grateful for you, and I'm sending you all the productive vibes your way so you have the best week ever.